Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Finance Committee of the Sunshine Coast Regional District for Thursday, July 18th, 2024. It's 2:09, and I would like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is located within the traditional territories of the Seashelt and Squamish Nations. Directors, we have an agenda in front of us today. It's a fairly short agenda, but I know that Director McMahon wanted to add something, so Director McMahon?
Thank you. Under new business, could I add the topic budget mandate?
All right, thank you. Is there anything else, directors? If not, I would look for a motion to approve as amended.
I'll move that with that addition.
Thank you. Seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, motion to receive all reports and communications. Thank you. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Carried. We'll move right on into Annex A, pages 3 to 108. Sunshine Coast Regional District Q2 Corporate Financial Variance, and turn it over to Manager Wing if he's got a brief introduction for us.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the second quarter corporate variance report that's focused on the operating revenue and expenses. The one caveat I always like to say with this report is these numbers should be considered as preliminary. It's quite a short turnaround from month end to when this report needs to be produced. Really at a high level, it's intended to identify any areas of concern. So with that, what we're seeing trends as far as revenue and operating expenses go are very much in line with prior years. No real significant areas of concern. And on a service level basis, there are a couple areas there being Gibson's and Roberts Creek Fire. Roberts Creek Fire doesn't show up on the deficit list of services with deficits, but it is close, and those services were in a deficit position at year end last year and are trending towards that again this year. So we'll be looking a little closer at those and how we can mitigate towards year end for those. The only other two services that I'll mention are the fleet services and building maintenance services. Those are internal recovering functions, and they're trending at slight deficits, so we'll keep a close eye on those and hopefully see trending more towards this positive surplus towards the end of Q3 and year end. That'll take any questions. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Director McMahon.
Yes, on page 6, Half Moon Bay smoke control. I'm curious, is the higher spending based on actual smoke-related bylaw calls, or is the smoke control a percentage of overall bylaw costs? They're just assigned to smoke control?
Good question.
Yeah, thank you. I did have a brief look at what was there, and it is direct wages being charged to the service. I don't know the specifics of what the wages were related to, whether it was a specific bylaw call or infraction, but it was bylaw officer wages that were charged there, yes.
Okay. Follow up?
Yeah, because we had a lot of smoke-related complaints in Area E, and I'm wondering if this is a trend and if there is some way we can track that. Actually, come to think of it, the bylaw stats we get in the quarterly reports tell us what calls are for, I think. But is it possible to follow up to find out how the smoke control funding is assigned?
Yes, it is certainly possible. I mean, from a funding perspective, it's just an estimate. There's a small amount for wages placed there. But yeah, we can follow up and determine how and what type of calls are charged to those services, absolutely.
Thank you. Director White.
Thank you, Chair. I was I was expecting Director McMahon to ask about the Gibsons and Area Fire Department, and I could just piggyback on that, but I guess I've got to open that up. So could we get some, is there any more elaboration that staff can offer on what is going on here? Because, I mean, it looks like it's salary, too, that's significantly over, and I mean, shouldn't we have some relative assurance of what that's going to be? And second, I mean, I'll just say, too, that this is very concerning because our taxation goes up has been going up significantly every year for this function. And I think that the ratepayers' expectation is generally that we're doing that to make sure costs are covered, and yet we're still seeing this deficit. So this is, I think, a big concern to all our areas that pay into this function, and we're hoping to get a handle on it. So I'm wondering if there's more information on what's going on here.
Thank you. Manager Wing?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're correct. The majority of the deficit is being driven by wages. I believe there's a discrepancy into what was budgeted and what we're actually seeing as far as wage rates going in there. Some of this has to do with the allocation of, managers and how they're distributed and where they're actually working, budget in relation to actual. But what I would suggest is if you would like, if the board would like to see a more in-depth analysis, that you request that we report back on that.
Follow-up?
I guess I'll say, from what I'm hearing so far, I want to state that, on behalf of the town, I'm not inclined to be covering this deficit. This is something that needs to be figured out internally, because we are covering increases for the department every year, and sounds like something where there's a discrepancy between what they're budgeted for and what they're actually spending significantly like this is something that the fire department's going to need to sort out internally and fast, because this is I hope that's the message that staff is going to be giving them on this.
Acting CAO?
Thank you, Chair. What can occur, and when we do these variances, if there's more detail that the committee would like to have, they can make a subsequent motion to have a follow-up report. And part of that could be, tactics to mitigate. It could be a little more deep dive into the rationale or the reasons why things are happening. So those have been requested in the past, especially when there were specific concerns of reports. And again, a subsequent report will come as part of Q3 variance report, just as far as an update as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Director Bax because he hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet, and then I'll go to Director McMahon.
Thanks. I'd like to just go over a little bit of page 38, the Roberts Creek Fire Department. Manager Wing mentioned earlier that the department was in a deficit, and it doesn't appear to be that in this document. Looks like there's a surplus of almost $6,000, and I was wondering if there is a deficit within that department or not.
Yes, thank you. What is not reflected in this report, and I mentioned the timing, is the second quarter honoraria that are issued to volunteers. Once those are accounted for, it would move this service into a deficit, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you. Director McMahon?
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate the concerns raised by Director White. When I went back and looked, the fire department was almost $79,000 over budget at the end of 2023. I remember that we gave them a base budget increase for 2024, and now they're significantly in the hole again. And so I think we do need two things. First, a follow-up report from staff. And just I need a little clarity on the timing, because if it comes with the regular quarterly reporting, then that would be October would be the next one. Okay. And the other thing that we have an option of doing is call a meeting of the Gibsons and District Fire Commission to discuss that. But probably it wouldn't be useful to have the meeting until we have the budget report. So I'm willing to move that we get an in-depth report on the Gibsons and District Fire Service deficit.
And I've got a seconder for that. Director Stanford, I saw your hand up. Was it to second? Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Director Bax?
Yeah, I wonder if the deficit isn't being created by the increased demand that's being put on fire departments in the way of training, and that these extra funds that are going into salaries and wages reflect training people that have been hired. There's contractors that are hired and brought to the coast to do training. So I was wondering if if staff would include that into their report as to where the money is actually going, because I would think that the increased demand on the fire service in the way of training is going to increase costs.
Thank you, Director Bax. I think that's exactly the intention of the motion that's on the floor right now, is to know where those costs are. Director White?
That's basically what I was going to say. That's the report we asked for, to find out where this is coming from. But yeah, if we're going to talk about training, when I first arrived at this board in 2014, we approved the first, a full-time training officer for Gibsons, and I mean, I feel like all the training requests have properly been coming. Funding those expenses have been coming to the board at budget time, like they should be, and we shouldn't be seeing kind of a midterm deficit like this. So hopefully, we'll get some answers in the report.
Thank you. I just wanted to seek some clarity from Director McMahon, because you didn't have a timeline associated with the report. Are you okay with it just flowing with the Q3, or do you want to see it? Do you want to see it sooner?
Personally, I think that Q3 would probably be fine, because I suspect September is going to be extremely busy here. So I think October is probably more realistic.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up. I will call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Directors, any other questions about the Q2 financial variance? If not, thank you very much. We're going to move on to Annex B, pages 109 to 114 in our agenda package, Sunshine Coast Regional District debt as of June 30th, 2024. And I don't know, CFO or acting CAO?
Yeah.
Whichever hat you're wearing today.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, we'll take any questions if there are any. It's just for information as part of our regular updates. We provide this twice a year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director McMahon?
Yes, I was looking at the handy-dandy chart on page 112 showing the historical debt balances. And then I was thinking to myself, what is that chart going to look like when we add $17 million to the top of the blue bar? It's actually going to go right off the top of the chart. So am I correct about this?
Yes.
Short question, short answer.
And that's without any additional commitments that we may be making for, other capital spending. Just, it's a bit scary. Just gonna say that.
Thank you. Directors, any other questions on this particular report? If not, we will move on to Annex C, starting on page 115 in our agenda package, which is Canada Community Building Fund, Community Works Fund update. Again, I think this one is primarily just here for information. If there's any questions from directors, Director McMahon.
Yeah, me again. So I understand that staff are having a meeting to dig deeper into the new agreement. I'm just wondering when the next update on this will come to the board, that will have more information on the implications of the new agreement. Thank you.
Acting CAO.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we anticipate to get some more information next week, and we hope that's will be followed up by UBCM through some written information. They typically post that on their website. I would assume during UBCM there will be some sessions that will provide elected officials some update as well. So we could follow up in perhaps October as far as an information report and synthesize that for public.
Great, thank you very much. Directors, any last minute questions before we move on? I see no hands. So with that, we'll move on to Annex D. Starting on page 119 of the agenda package, this is the Sunshine Coast Arena water well investigation support. This is the response letter from the District of Sechelt about cost sharing. When we had the conversation during budget, it was about asking the District of Sechelt for contributions towards any construction works that were involved in the project. And I think somewhere we had a bit of a disconnect, and this is just closing the loop. So this is just for information. So directors, any questions before we move on to our item of new business, because we have no communications. So Director McMahon, I will turn to you.
Right. I was just asking because the term budget mandate has come up several times in discussions, and the idea that the board should set a budget mandate. And I just wanted a very brief intro from our CFO as to what a budget mandate is, what it may look like. We have not done that in the last 5 years here at the board, so I just wanted a little bit of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Just before I go to the CFO, not really looking to make any decisions today, just looking for information about what that might look like. Something we can take away over the summer break and come back to in September. So, Acting CAO.
Thank you, Chair. This can come in many different forms. It could come in the financial form. I think the challenge with regional districts is that it depends what services you're participating in, so it's much easier and there's a lot more flexibility in a municipal setting to have a budget update. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why we've not been as prescriptive here at the regional district. I think there could also come in the form of different type of qualitative direction to staff. Your strategic plan has some very specific focus areas, and so there has been some direction set in that regard. And so there could be some direction in the sense of capacity, how much you want to see. We all have already discussed and are undertaking a prioritization project here, just recognizing that we have some very aggressive work plans for the regional district, meaning we've got over 200 projects that are already committed. A lot of those are multi-year projects. So just a mandate about, just wanting to focus on some key priorities could be another budget mandate. So it can take many forms. I think that over the summer months and into the fall, the board and staff have already committed to come together to review what those prioritization of those projects are in alignment with the board's strategic plan review and various other undertakings that are going on, whether it's the water strategy, transit future plan, all of those types of things. We already have a lot of commitments already that the board has given direction back to staff. So just focusing on those would be another type of mandate. So there's a lot to contemplate. And in a regional district forum, as directors, you could have targets set within your own service areas. So within your electoral areas or member municipal areas, Definitely some general direction in the sense of whether it's staffing resources, project resources, various type of focus in certain types of service areas. And I guess, in short, it can take multiple forms. It could be individual, because in a regional district 4, it's a federation, and so all of you represent different areas. Or it could be collective. It could be in the sense of collective in the form of an overall tax impact. The other thing from a budget mandate is we often focus on taxation, but I think it's important to understand that we have property taxation, so ad valorem taxation, but we also have parcel taxes. We also have user fees that are part of the equation, so part of our rate setting exercises. And I think there's recognition over the last few budget years that there's some significant increases in various services, and cumulatively those have had some large impacts. So I think that affordability is something that directors are, and the community is expressing a concern about. We're also undertaking volumetric billing and those types of things. So all of those things will factor into, what is affordable to your ratepayers. We've gone out a few years ago to do some community surveys about, what some focus areas people would be interested in. So we could also undertake some questions out to the public. And through the summer months, I know some are going out to community events, and those are things that you can gauge your constituency on. And of course, doing it in a more holistic way and a large community survey has its pros and cons, but those are the types of things to engage with the constituents I think is of utmost importance. It's what's in the Community Charter, Local Government Act, and I think that we've always struggled to get that type of feedback back from the community in a I think holistic way. So not hearing from the same and having a broader input. So talking about how we can get out to the community and have these discussions with them, because of course they're topic specific typically. So again, that's another way we've tried to engage and get some public sentiment as to what people are interested in from the budget perspective to then lead to a proverbial budget mandate or budget focus.
Great. Thank you for that. Director White.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director McMahon, for adding this to the agenda. I think it's really, really crucial that we talk about this and pursue it. We really need to shift our approach to budgeting, and I want to share with the board just some of my experiences with mandates too, to help answer Director McMahon's question. Probably the most significant and public experience with it was when I was involved in provincial bargaining with our employee groups in the K-12 education system. And then in how that would work is the provincial government would give us a mandate and say the contract can be 1%, 2%, and any kind of, if that was non-negotiable, that piece, any kind of negotiations had to be taken place within that mandate, and it would include finding trade-offs. It would include going, okay, well, if we, if one of the employee groups wants a wage increase, or if we as the Employers Association wanted to offer a wage increase, we would have to find some kind of savings in the contract in order to support that. And yeah, that was the only way we had to be within the mandate. And sometimes that mandate was zero. We had to work with 0% mandates in some years. And we don't call it a mandate at the town of Gibson's, but we definitely do this at town of Gibson's too. I don't know how the District of Sechelt does their budgets, but all the time I've been at the town, the staff usually opens up the budget conversation by saying, so what do you think the public is, I think this is really key and relevant to the regional district, is the first question is, what do you think the public can handle this year, basically, and what is the public looking for? Because I could say that, and that depends on what we're feeling from surveys and what we're getting from the public. And I mean, I know at the town we've had a lot of input about infrastructure needing to be upgraded, so that's always kind of played into our decisions on the budget these last 2 years. And I think our first year we said 1.5 above our 5% that we were already stuck with policing. And then I think last year it was a 3%. So what happens then is then staff has to go back and find, okay, well, here are the priority asks, the requests that we think align with your strategic plan, that we think align with the public's priorities, that fit in for that 3%. And that priority, that first set of prioritization happens at the staff level, which would be really interesting here because we have all these different functions, but I think it would be extremely helpful because otherwise, as we see and have discussed before, we just kind of get everything project by project, and it's like the assessment is this a good project or not? Like it's all singular like that, and we usually say, yes, this is a good project. We support it. And what happens is you end up with a double-digit tax increase at the end of the day when, in my view, we should really be setting a mandate at the start for what we feel is justifiable in taxing our public. So I strongly support this. I've been thinking about it for a while, which is why I've got this little speech to share with everybody. And I'd even would like to put forward a motion to ask staff to prepare some options on this for Q3, which I think our staff is very much prepared to do. It's clearly they've been thinking a lot about this too. So I could do that now if there's no other
I don't see.
discussion on that. Okay, no other hands up. I'd like so that staff prepare options to pursue a budget mandate in the 2024 budget, 2025 budget. Wow. Like it was my birthday last week, and yeah, apparently I'm a year older. I missed that.
Do you want to just start over?
Okay. That staff prepare options to pursue a budget mandate in the 2025 budget, including limiting budget increases to our prior commitments going into 2025, and that these options be presented to the board in Q3.
And I've got a second for that. Thank you. All right, that motion's on the floor. Directors, any discussion about the motion? Director McMahon?
Yeah, I'm just wondering timing. I don't have my whole calendar up, but when is our next finance meeting?
July.
The next scheduled Finance Committee meeting is for October, and it has similar agenda topics, so that's the Q3 variance report will be presented. If I may add, Chair, also, just the budget dates have also been set, so towards the end of October will be pre-budget. So that would likely be when we would present this information, or we could present it ahead of that. So we'll just have to think about timing and how it aligns with budget preparations. But I think that's okay. I think giving this type of forewarning to staff before they go ahead and prepare a whole bunch of information, that they get just a general sense of where the board's thinking and where they're going. So I think the timing of this is good. And then round one is scheduled for late November. So, yeah.
Thank you. Director McMahon, You're okay? Yeah. Okay. I guess technically it's to the board is the motion, so it doesn't have to come to a finance committee necessarily, because your motion was to the board, so. Directors, any other discussion on the motion? Director Lee?
I'm kind of curious about a budget mandate. Would we be including both aspects, expense and capital, in that? In other words, the overall? I think the answer is probably yes.
I think that's a yes. I think the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think it's really focused on taxation, whether, if something's if capital, whether it's capital operations being funded by taxation, that's what really what determines a mandate.
Director Bax?
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion on this issue in various workshops that we've had, and we're talking about a red line, right? What's above and below the red line? What can we afford? And I believe that's what we're looking for as a board to see. And the red line could move depending on what level of taxation we're willing to impose. So that's the kind of information that I'm looking for.
Thank you. Director McMahon?
My understanding of the red line is it applies to projects, and we never actually look at our regular operations that are ongoing. And so I also, am very interested to know what efficiencies or savings we could find in our existing services to allow us to afford some of these projects that we very badly need.
Thank you. Director Gavias?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the timeline and what steps are needed. And I heard the acting CAO talk about community engagement and maybe directors going out in their community and having some engagement sessions. When would those need to take place? I'm just trying to think, like, do these need to take place in the summer? Oh, I'm gonna see. No, okay. Oh,
I'm just lining up.
oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so when would we need that feedback from the community to incorporate in that mandate?
Thank you. Perhaps the acting CAO can enlighten us as to anything that might already be planned for community engagement, if they're aware of it at this time.
So I think this is just based on capacity, but we've done this many different ways and at many different times of the cycle. So I think it's a discussion amongst the board and directing back to staff on what you'd like to see in your community. And then we tie that back. We've done community dialogues where it's not overt in the sense that it's budget. So we talk more about these are the projects and the things we're looking at, whether it's water projects, transit projects, all of that. But a community survey is something that might be a useful tool to bring back as far as affordability. And we've done those before, and we've structured them such that we collect data related to rural area specific. I know there's pros and cons with surveys, but having this before you get too far into your budget process, the ideal time frame would be at pre-budget, before pre-budget, but most certainly before your round one deliberations. But it's never too late for community engagement. It can happen all the time.
Thank you. Director White?
Yeah, maybe this could be part of the options, but I don't necessarily see having a mandate as requiring more community engagement or consultation than any government should usually do during a budget. We typically have a engagement at the town, whether it's a dialogue or something specific to the budget every year. And whether there's a mandate or not, we go out there and hear from the public. Sometimes we do a survey too, to get a sense of what people think our priorities should be. So I don't necessarily see having a mandate being, requiring us to do like a really huge consultation that's going to like delay things and make this really challenging. I think it should just be, we should always do some consultation, and directors should feel informed that they know what their public's priorities are when they come to the budget.
Thank you. I think the question was more generally about budget consultation and engagement rather than the specific of a mandate. But Director McMahon?
Yeah, well, we'll come back to this again in the fall. Nobody's going to want to engage about the budget in August. We did a survey a few years ago, I remember that, asking the community about their priorities for spending, which were pretty straightforward. I remember they were, the top priorities were things like water. I don't think we've ever asked the community what would be your top priority for cutting if we were to cut services. That would be really interesting, but again, it's not a scientific study, but it would be entertaining anyway.
Director Lee?
If we go to ask the public what they would like, it would say more services at less cost. So I don't know that we need to ask. I'm very reluctant to go with a mandate rather than the way we were doing it, because we add new services and we ask the public if they want them, and they say yes, and then we add them. When we add new services, it automatically increases your expense budget because you have to operate them. And you also have the effects of inflation, which are quite clearly out of our control. So when we started in 2019, we were in pretty big trouble with our budget, and that's because there was a budget mandate of maximum inflation, and that was it. Well, you immediately start cutting things like your asset management because it isn't biting you in the ass right away. And in the RD here, we're easy to blame because we've got the things that people want more of, like water. So it's pretty tough. But staff knows all this, and so what the heck? We're just asking them, if you give us a mandate, what's going to happen? And I see nothing wrong with that. That's good information. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's going in it with your eyes wide open, because you might not like the answer. Anyways,
Thank
thanks.
you. Thank you, Director. And I think, at this point, we're just looking for staff to bring us some options, some ideas. We might see the report, we might deliberate over it, and then say thank you and move on with the process as we do it now. I'm going to go to Director Inkster because he hasn't had a chance to speak, and then I'll come to Director White.
Yeah, not much to say on this. It's good to do those processes. In many cases, the municipalities can be a little more nimble, and I remember bringing in a 0, a 1, and a 1.5 budget, 2009, 10, and 11. Try doing that now. That's 4% over a number of years with inflation on those numbers, and that was total. But the regional district has some challenges. A number of years ago, we tried to cut the minibuses. What do we call those again? Handy Dart. And this room was full. And we've tried to cut some recreational programs over the last number of years, and staff and the board gets letters, and this room is full. So it'll be an interesting process because some of the decision-making is perhaps not doing and/or cutting. So I've gone through it before here and at the other table, and as Director Lee said, there's a number of services that are provided that people want more of, and if we withdraw them, you get a big pushback. Thanks.
Thank you. Director White.
I think this is a great conversation. And I do want to say, I would expand that, that definition that Director Lee made of the services people want to all local government. All local governments are responsible for the services that people want, and I'll remind you as well. I remind the board that, like for example, if water is the example, well, the town also has to pay for water. So, yeah, the services that people want, that applies to all of us, all our municipal services. And I think I also wanted to expand. One thought I've had on this conversation too, and I thank Director Lee for raising it, is it made me think. I wonder if maybe it might be possible in this report. I'm wondering if staff can maybe comment on this to illuminate a little bit about how the operations budget is looking. And because, I mean, when it does come to inflation, those operational increases that have to be integrated every year, I know that often that's kind of invisible to us somehow. It's, in some ways, it's kind of already done. It's all integrated into the amount of revenue we're expecting, and I don't know what kind of when we can even have that estimate of when we can expect revenue. At this point, I don't remember, but sometimes that's based on growth, and we can expect more than we usually get the year before, if providing the community's growing and based on other issues as well. But I'll just give you an example again. At the town, we tend to call that mandate or that increase is our operations budget. Everything else is like at that kind of zero level. We find we work within at a kind of basically a mandate of zero, and then the increase covers the capital. It's if it's a 0.5 or 0.2 or whatever, we call it our capital budget, and usually it's our infrastructure department that comes forward and says, okay, you can add a new whatever, upgrade to the sewage plant or whatever is what you can pay for with this. So yeah, that's how we do it. But I wonder if maybe this report could include some information on how our operations budget is looking, which also I understand it also implies to when we have those increases going into the budget. Sometimes if we're already looking at a 5% increase before roughly for say my area the budget even starts, sometimes that's due to the inflation and those costs that Len's looking at.
Thank you. Just before I go to the acting CAO for a CFO answer, I think pretty much every time we see the budget related documents, we get a little table that includes the things that are pre-baked in, the mandatories and what have you. So I don't know if there's anything to build on that at this time, but.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And without getting too far into the details, the SCRD really does apply as is budget from the prior year, and the only things that are included in that base that roll over into the next year are things like bargaining unit adjustments for wages and any contractual obligations that the board has approved throughout the year. So operational contracts that will have inflationary escalations. We don't actually have any inflationary increases in our budgets, and we haven't since 2011. They're not automatically applied. It was something the board took away. We used to apply CPI to them, so we would build that elasticity and it would actually reduce. So that is something that we could look at. But I think the justification back then was that, you know, we're generating pretty large surpluses and we just want to work within the envelope. So that's why we have budget proposals to have base budget increase for certain type of elements. Growth too is not an automatic application. It actually compresses the budget. So if there is growth, then that just changes the apportionment amongst folks, and it changes the way we raise one tax dollar. So there is one illustration that we provide. We're just mindful that, you know, analysis paralysis is fun for financial people, but not necessarily for the public and the board. But so we do have that information. We can show that. And so that's why we build those what if scenarios. So this is what's kind of baked in the cake. And if you add these different layers, that's what the implication is going to be per area. So, but we'll consider this as part of the report.
Great, thank you very much. And I don't see any other hands up. Last call, directors. If not, I will call the question on the motion. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We have no in-camera session, so I look for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from our online attendee? Connie? I don't see anything, so with that, we'll bid everybody farewell.